A fairly long time ago, Peg and I we weren't married for very long, and we decided to go camping. You remember that? Yeah, okay. And after a good dinner and a bottle of wine, we retired for the night, and we went to sleep. And some hours later, Peg wakes up, and she nudges me. She says, "Ken, look up at the sky and tell me what you see." "I see millions and millions of stars." "And Mr. Philosophy Major, what do you deduce from that?" I love it when she called me Mr. Philosophy Major. And I said, "Well, astronomically, it tells me that there are millions of galaxies and potentially billions of planets. Astrologically, I observe that Saturn is in Leo. Horologically, I deduce that the time is approximately 3:15 in the morning. Meteorologically, I suspect we'll have a beautiful day tomorrow. Theologically, I can see that God is all-powerful and that we are a small and insignificant part of the universe. What does it tell you, Peg?"
That you were with a different wife.
Yeah. All right. And in a rare moment, Peg is quiet. And then she says, "Ken, as brilliant as you are, you missed the obvious. Someone has stolen our tent." You don't remember it that way. You don't. All right. Indeed, on a clear night, we can see thousands of stars. And we were reminded this past week as we honored the life and service of George H.W. Bush that he had a vision of a kinder and gentler nation. And when we look with eyes of hope and with hearts of trust in the goodness of life, we will see, quote, "a brilliant diversity spread like stars, like 1,000 points of light in a broad and peaceful sky," unquote. The term 1,000 points of light was used by George H.W. Bush in his speech accepting the presidential nomination at the 1988 Republican National Convention in New Orleans. Written for Bush by Peggy Noonan and Craig Smith, the address likened America's clubs and volunteer organizations to a brilliant diversity spread like stars, like 1,000 points of light in a broad and peaceful sky. Bush reprised the phrase near the end of his speech, affirming that he would keep America moving forward, always forward, for a better America, for an endless, enduring dream, and again, 1,000 points of light. He repeated the phrase in his inaugural address on January 20th, 1989. Again, I quote, "I have spoken of 1,000 points of light of all the community organizations that are spread like stars throughout the nation doing good. We will work hand in hand, encouraging, sometimes leading, sometimes being led, rewarding. We will work on this in the White House, in the cabinet agencies. I will go to the people and the programs that are the brighter points of light, and I will ask every member of my government to become involved. The old ideas are new again because they are not old. They are timeless. Duty, sacrifice, commitment, and a patriotism that finds its expression in taking part and pitching in." we are reminded, and reminded in this Advent season, a season of lights. And during Hanukkah, season of lights, that there are many kinds of light. There is the light that allows people to see in the darkness. There is the light that allows people to find their way home when they are lost in the dark. There is the light of hope that dispels just enough despair to keep someone from hurting themselves. There is the light of compassion that takes away some of the loneliness when someone feels they are suffering all alone. There is the light of truth-telling. When this light shines, the rats who love the darkness, they either run or they fight. There is the light that is the lamp unto our feet. It shines on the path ahead of us so that we do not stumble and fall. There is the light of courage. Fear tries to put the light out, but we are determined to keep it burning bright. There is the light in our own window here at Shadow Rock. Specifically, it burns as long as we hold space for someone who is under the threat of deportation, because we believe families should be together and human beings should not be deported to their deaths. More universally, it burns because we hold our core values of inclusion and justice and spirituality as guiding lights for our decisions and our way of being in the world. The lights of our lives hold the monsters back. When I was about 8 years old, I had a nightmare. I dreamed I was in the house we were living in, and I was walking down the hallway of our home toward the last 2 bedrooms at the end of the hallway. My room was on the right, and my parents' room was on the left. I got to the end of the hallway, and I looked into my parents' room, and everything in the dream was exactly as it was in reality. There was the bed, there was the dresser, there was the chest of drawers, there was the mirror. I could look into my parents' room and see my reflection in the mirror on my mother's dresser. In the dream, when I looked into the mirror on my mother's dresser, I did not see the usual reflection of myself. Instead, I saw a monster. It jumped out of the mirror and it grabbed me. And in that moment, I woke up. And we'll let the psychologists among us analyze the dream of seeing a monster in my mother's mirror. And I'll be able to tell who you are when you start to avoid me. The dream affected me, and it made me afraid to walk down the hallway of my home. For a while, I could not walk down the hallway without turning on every light along the way. I'd turn on the hall light. I'd turn on the bathroom light. I turned on the spare bedroom light. I would get to my room and I would slowly reach into the room and around the corner to feel for the bedroom light switch and then turn on that light before I would walk into my own room. And one night, I decided that I would go with my brain instead of my fears. In the book Dune, the main character would recite the litany against fear. It goes like this: I must not fear. Fear is the mind killer. Fear is the little death that brings total obliteration. I will face my fear. I will permit it to pass over me and through me. And when it has gone past, I will turn the inner eye to see its path. Where the fear has gone, there will be nothing. Only I will remain. I did not read the novel Dune until many years later, but I was practicing the litany against fear without knowing it. I made myself walk down the hallway without turning on any lights. I stood at the end of the hallway and looked into the mirror on my mother's dresser without any lights. I walked into my dark room without turning on any lights. My fear did not go away, but I did it anyway. My fear went away only after I turned the light on. Light has a way of doing that for us. So there are many kinds of light, and we need all these different kinds of light to overcome all the different kinds of darkness. However, not only do we need light, and not only can we be grateful for the 1,000 points of light in our lives, but we can also be a light for each other. The story of the Buddha's last dying words are exactly this point of light. Before he dies, he looked into the frightened faces of the people around him and he said, "Make of yourself a light." Mary Oliver wrote a poem about this scene and the Buddha's final teaching. "Make of yourself a light," said the Buddha before he died. I think of this every morning as the east begins to tear off its many clouds of darkness, to send up the first signal, a white fan streaked with pink and violet and even green. An old man, he lay down between two sala trees, and he might have said anything, knowing it was his final hour. The light burns upward. It thickens and settles over the fields. Around him the villagers gathered and stretched forward to listen. Even before the sun itself hangs disattached in the blue air, I am touched everywhere by its ocean of yellow waves. No doubt, he thought of everything that had happened in his difficult life. And then I feel the sun itself as it blazes over the hills like a million flowers on fire. Clearly, I'm not needed. Yet, I feel myself turning into something of inexplicable value. Slowly, beneath the branches, he raised his head. He looked into the faces of that frightened crowd. Mary Oliver's poem ends where it begins. It ends with the death of a light in the life of the Buddhist community. But unlike the beginning, the end leaves out the words, "Make of yourself a light." The end of the poem, with its silence, begs you to fill in the words for yourself. Parker Palmer reminds us that no one can provide all the light we need, nor can any of us be all the light needed by another person. But every one of us can shed some kind of light for somebody. Every day, at the rising of the sun, we can ask ourselves, what kind of light can I provide today? Amen.